Welcome to Sold with Webinars, a podcast that aims to uncover how the most successful experts, coaches, consultants, and e-course professionals sell their products and services with just one sales presentation or webinar. A simple sales webinar can transform the business and life of a solopreneur. And this podcast will show you how other experts just like you are generating 6 and 7 figures per year online with their webinars. So let's get started. Hey, what's going on, experts? It's Joel here with Sold with Webinars. And guys, I just hopped off a very important message, a very important solo podcast for you that talks about the big myth in the info marketing space, the 997 myth. I broke this down because you have to understand some very important things if you're going to be successful with selling your courses through webinars or through any sort of different medium, right? Understanding this crazy myth of the holy grail of digital marketing is going to completely transform your business. I went on a little bit of a rant today, but it's super important. It's super important. I see far too often over the past year or so, people coming to me with this, thinking that this was their ticket to freedom. And when I challenged them on it, they really didn't have a good answer. So that's what I talked about in this episode today. And at the end of the episode, if you guys like this episode, hit me up at Joel at the Webinar Agency or ping me on Facebook and just give me some feedback. Just spread the love. Give me some, engage with this episode if it makes sense. And I would love to get your feedback. Okay, without further ado, let's jump into today's episode. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, and I'm going to rip off another solo episode for you right now. I want to talk about something that's extremely important that I've been seeing trending over the course of the past year and a half to 2 years, especially when I get people inquiring to work with me privately or to inquire about, reviewing one of their existing webinars, particularly in the information marketing space, in the course creation space. Now, a lot of times people will come to me and they'll say, Joel, I want to work with you, or I want to do a webinar, or whatever it is. I want this webinar to sell a $997 product. And a lot of times I take a step back and I said, okay, awesome. Well, if that's what you want to do, totally get it. That's fine. And possibly we can think of a way to do that. But here's what is really kind of grinding my gears is that in the world of digital marketing, there seems to be this myth of the 997 product, right? People think that this is like the holy grail to really build their business off of. And while I've worked with lots of people who have done 997 products to cold traffic, and I totally get it, but most of the time, people just think that their audience wants to buy a 997 product. And so when I start asking them questions, I said, okay, well, why do you want to sell a $997 product? Like, where is this coming from? Like, oh, well, and they tell me, well, I see lots of other people selling a $997 product. And I mean, they're not actually saying they see a lot of other people do it, but they're like, yeah, it's just, I want a webinar that can sell a $1,000 product. And so I start going into more and more details, and they're like, yeah, I just want to send cold traffic to a webinar. And at the end of the webinar, I want to pitch a $1,000 offer, and then I want to send unlimited traffic to make it work. And I'm just like, well, let's take a step back here, right? Let's take a step back. And, what's the root cause of why you want to do a $997 product? Like, does your audience even want a $997 product? And they're like, well, I don't even know. I mean, you've done it before, right? Can you help me do it? Well, the answer is not really, can I help you do it? It's, does your audience even really want a $997 product, right? There's this underlying myth or misconception that people think that every audience will buy a $997 course. And the fact of the matter is, it's just not entirely true. If it's not entirely true, then it's false. So here's the thing, like when I'm working with clients and, depending on where their traffic source is coming from and how warm their audience is, like, can you sell a $997 product? I don't know, right? But people are leaving so much money on the table by trying to go for the home run with the webinar. Yeah, absolutely. I wish every single client could have a $1 million per month, business with a webinar as their main engine, right? I really wish that could happen. Even $100,000 per month. I wish that could happen for everybody. But the fact of the matter is, in the world of marketing, you have to understand how big of an ask Are you making people invest with you and shift with you to commit to learn with whatever it is that you're teaching them? How big of an ask is it? Let me give you an example, because I'm not just talking about the investment price. Okay. I was working with a client a while ago in the house flipping space. He's like, we've got a webinar. I want to sell a $997 program, and I want, that was their whole goal, right? And so I took him on as a client. I worked with them, rewrote their webinar, and I was pitching it for them. It was an awesome, awesome webinar. They were driving cold traffic to it, and I was pitching it for them live on the webinar. And by the time I got to the end of it, I felt so confident. I felt so confident that we were going to open the cart and we were going to have just dozens and dozens and dozens of sales, and it was going to be the freaking home run. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. I think we made one sale on that webinar, and it was a complete dud, complete and utter failure. And I started thinking man, what is going on here? What is going on? And as I started to think more and more and more about it, and I'll be completely honest with you, this didn't happen overnight. This isn't something that I just discovered at the end of that webinar. I'm like, oh, well, it didn't work. Sorry. It is what it is. We'll chalk it up. We'll try next time. I tried a bunch of times, and that webinar did not convert to cold traffic. I'm like, what is going on here? And then I started to think about the offer. I started to look at the audience, and what they were pitching was a business opportunity to learn how to purchase and flip real estate homes. Cold traffic to a webinar, into a $997 course. And what I understood and what I came to realize was that the investment amount wasn't necessarily the barrier, because that's the first thing that we all look at, right? It's the cost of the course, the investment of the course and the training. That's got to be the problem, right? No, wrong. The main issue that I discovered years later, the main issue was that the commitment level for somebody to actually participate in this training, in this opportunity, was far too great. Most of these people were, still working a day job. Maybe some of them were entrepreneurs and they had their own business. But flipping real estate, buying a home and flipping it and hiring contractors to do, all of the work for you, that is a lot of work. And not necessarily a lot of work, but that's a big shift that people had to commit to internally, in addition to the investment, their time, their effort, and their energy. They had to commit to saying, okay, great. This is going to be my full-time gig, right? I'm going to go all in with this. And they haven't been warmed up to me yet. They haven't been warmed up to my client yet. They've only seen the webinar, and they only know that in order to be successful with flipping real estate and to flip your house, here are all the pillars that need to be involved. And what I made a terrible mistake with was assuming that by the end of the webinar, they'd be willing to completely pivot their careers and invest into real estate full time. And the reason why that they weren't ready to commit was it was too big of an ask. So what do we do differently? How do we solve this? Okay. And the answer is much simpler than you think. If you think about it in terms of your customer journey, your buyer's journey, your audience's journey, okay? If you have a lot of content and there's a lot of work involved to get them to be successful in whatever it is that you're positioning, don't think that $1,000 course is your ticket to freedom, right? What we started doing in the meantime for lots of these types of clients is, rather than selling a $1,000 offer for the course or for the training, we framed it as, okay, how can I get them in on a lower commitment level, still giving them access to all the training, because it's really, really important. They have to learn it to be successful. But I need to get them in at a lower commitment and then work on ascending them if I'm going from cold traffic and I'm not really warming them up aside from the webinar. So what we would do now is, in these types of instances where we have really in-depth work that the customer needs to go through, is we get them in on a month-to-month membership site where they pay to play, right? Because if you think about it, letting them pay to get access to your course all of your content is already created, that's additional trust that they get to build with you when they're consuming your content. And the more trust that they have with you, the more likely they will be to ascend into higher level programs. So while people seem to think that the holy grail is that $9.97 offer, it's not, because your audience might not want a $9.97 offer. Think about different ways that you can get them in on a different type of offer so they can start to educate themselves more, because they might actually be sold on house flipping or whatever your opportunity is. They might actually be sold on it, but they still need time to really commit to it. Don't be afraid to give them the content you've already created and continue to sell them inside of your course. And when I say sell them inside of your course, I simply mean leverage your expertise and leverage your educational content to sell them that they made the right decision. Let your teaching do all of the sales for you, and then reach out to them and ascend them into the next level program, higher intimacy, more one-on-one focus or more additional support, right? Reframing it into a monthly membership site is a great way to grow your customer base and to really explode your business if your audience doesn't want that holy grail of a $9.97 offer. Does that make sense, guys? I hope it does, because it's really important that if you're struggling, if I want you to think, how big of an ask, how big of a transformation is it for your audience to make that commitment? Assuming money was no issue, money was no object, how else can you convert them? How else can you educate them? And how else can you get them to sell themselves leveraging content you've already created? Go implement this, rethink your offers, rethink your content, rethink everything that you're talking about inside of your webinar. And I guarantee your brain will start to, the gears will start to churn. I really do feel like this is a super important topic to uncover, and hopefully you got a lot of value out of this. But that's all I've got for today. Go implement this. If you like this episode, please spread the love, connect with me, send me a message, joel@thewebinaragency.com. Tell me if this made sense to you, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to giving you the next one. You can also follow and watch the behind-the-scenes look at how I'm personally launching a brand new 6- and 7-figure product from scratch at soldwithwebinars.com/TV. And if you'd like to come hang out with other fellow experts, join our Facebook group at soldwithwebinars.com/experts. Join us next time, and I'll see you there.